Indonesia is home to over 18,000 islands. So what is it about Bali that makes it so special? The story of Bali's tourism starts with Australian surfers who regularly came to Kuta at the end of the 70s to hunt waves. The first bed and breakfast business concept was brought by an Italian couple in southern Denpasar in 79. But Bali's famed white sand beaches and lush forest were deserted after the suicide bombing that killed 202 mostly foreign tourists in 2002, a tragedy that lingered for years and decimated one of Asia's top tourist destinations. That's when Julia Roberts comes into play with the movie Eat, Pray, Love, shot in Ubud and released in 2010, which catapulted Bali's popularity and led to a tourism boost that hasn't slowed down since. My personal experience with Bali started in 2019 when I was still working as a flight attendant and involved a bar fight, but that's a story for another day. Admittedly, I spent a very short amount of time on ground, but wasn't particularly impressed with what I saw. Screaming drunk Australians and reckless scooter driving next to children begging for money on dirty sidewalks. Not my scene, I thought. If this is what Bali is all about, then I want nothing to do with it. But opportunity presented itself, and I thought I'd revisit the idea and change my mind, hopefully. After all, I had only seen very little, and everyone seemed to love the place. But this isn't a happy story. Bali is notorious for insane traffic. I'm talking 3 hours to go 30 kilometers far. Tourist spots are far away from another, and it can take easily the whole day to visit 2 or 3 spots. Keep in mind the island is only 140 kilometers long and 80 kilometers wide. That makes it about the same size as the US states of Rhode Island, or slightly smaller than the Canadian province of Prince Edward Island. An island this small was never meant to host that many tourists. Over 2.1 million tourists entered via Ngurah Rai Airport in 2022, with an increased target of 4.5 million in 2023. That's over the whole population of Los Angeles. And for me, this is where it starts to go wrong.
Come to Bali, they said. It's a paradise, they said. Nah, it's just traffic all day long. Everywhere you go. Traffic, and I get high on fumes.
It has become democratized for tourists in Bali to rent scooters and go about their day, but what most people don't realize, or rather choose not to, is that it is illegal to drive scooters if you don't carry an appropriate license. Shocking, isn't it? For this, I blame the Indonesian government and tourists equally. Why would you do something abroad you never in a million years would do back home? Driving a motorized vehicle without the right to do so, and insurance, or even the skills, seems lunar to me. Obviously, aren't only putting yourself at danger, but more so others. I actually know of someone who got in a bad accident and ended up spending 2 months in a Balinese hospital incurring fees of $22,000. Because guess what? It wasn't insured for driving a vehicle he didn't have a license for. Health insurance was also void since he put himself in an illegal situation. Imagine if he had injured or killed a third party. Your dream holiday easily turned into a nightmare. I say easily because it is extremely common for tourists to rent scooters, which brings me back to the horrendous traffic. The government isn't helping itself or its people by allowing such practices. Or does it? That's where I started seeing an ugly side to Bali. The government indirectly encourages unlawful rentals as it is an opportunity for the police to stop the little outlaws and find them. Rightfully so in that case.
I almost just got like arrested in Bali or something. The Bali police pulled me over and said I wasn't wearing a helmet and I didn't have an international driver's license and tried to take 1.5 million of their dollars from me, right? So then hustled by the police in Bali. The police, I thought America was bad right now.
If you think about it, it would be pretty simple for laws to be enforced. Tourists provide proper insurance and permits and it's happy days. But the real issue lies when you have an accident. Since you don't have a valid license to be driving a motorcycle, you are therefore not covered at all in case of injury. Imagine having to pay compensation to someone your entire life and the cost incurred. The Indonesian governments love it. It is pretty much waiting for bad things to happen to tourists since in 99% of the cases, they will be liable. Hospital costs won't be covered either since, again, you're breaking your insurance policy. Whether the tourist has to pay sky-high medical fees, bribes, fine, or the price of a brand new scooter altogether, it's raining money somewhere. Like I said, the government has a lot to win from people naively thinking it's okay to drive without proper license/insurance because everyone is doing it, right? If you manage to escape the people and not crash into anything, which is a feat in itself considering the madness of the traffic, don't forget to pack some cash for all the times you'll have to pay to park your scooter pretty much anywhere. Once again, the norm here is to extort tourists always a little bit more. I'm not talking about private parking, but plain old regular side of the road. You pay whoever decided this is not their plot of land to mafia around. If you've ever been to Bali, chances are you've seen a shady hand-to-hand deal unfold on the side of the road. It's very common practice, and most tourists will give you their "it's only $10, not much" response, which is, by the way, validating such gross behavior from an entity that's supposed to protect civilians, not steal from them.
If you pay here, I give you 250, 200 for you. It's good for you.
200, that's like $20?
Yes, maybe $20.
Then I don't have to go to court.
No go to court. Finish
I
here.
just give it to you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Father Spade.
Only one is enough.
You only one?
I have to drive.
No problem.
You're from the police.
Have you problem? You can call me here.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
Watch out, eh? But tell me secret.
Nah, secret.
Secret. How much money do you make out of this?
Today?
Yes?
Only 3?
Yes?
You 200?
I'm the best one, eh?
No. This one?
I'm a good one.
Yeah, you good number 2.
Yeah.
Number 1, 300.
Yes?
Number 2, you.
Yes?
Number 3, 100.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that's not the only time you'll be scammed on this island. Ever heard of Tegalaleng Terrace? The serene, lush rice paddies well known on Instagram is a prime example of this gross behavior. There, you will literally be charged for breathing. My personal story here. My boyfriend and I asked our driver to drop us in that area so we could walk alongside the rice fields and check out the stalls for souvenirs. We didn't actually want to go into the terrace and it might come as a shocker, they aren't that serene or lush. Rather full of tourists lining up for photos to make people back home believe their life is nothing but a dream. But we'll get back to that later. Our driver started looking uneasy, much to our miscomprehension. But he obliged and attempted to park. Right away, a man appeared out of nowhere and asked money for the parking spot. We told our driver he didn't actually need to park here and wait for us, but he insisted to accompany us. Because he knew it was the first of many haggles, of many fake entrance fees we must pay. We explained clearly that we didn't want to enter the fields, simply to cross the street to go have a coffee and check out the shops. Still, he insisted we had to pay, giving as an explanation that the whole area is not free for tourists. Obviously, this is untrue. And I cannot think of a single place on earth when people are charged for breathing air on a sidewalk. But I guess you live and you learn. We decided to skip the area altogether as we didn't want to participate in this massive scam. While checking the Google reviews for the place later on, we got confirmation it was pretty much worthless anyways. What pains me the most in this scheme is that it prohibits small shop owners from selling to people like us, as this mafia, who one day declare themselves as owner of the place, redirect foreigners towards specific cafe and shops, which in turns give them a commission back. Again, you'll find people telling you, but the entrance fee they're asking is less than $1. It's nothing to you. To which I invite to think of the dehumanization such practices generate. I'm in no way denying the fact that we're talking about a third world country where people are in vast majority financially poor. But such practices, for one, lead to a decline in tourism in the long run, and for two, only benefits a small group of dishonest people who often terrorize the population around it. Is it so important to get that perfect Instagram photo that you're willing to be part of the problem and contribute to a mafia's system?
Instagram vs reality Bali edition. So you guys can see me over there, the Bali rice paddies in a boat. Super beautiful early morning light. You guys have seen this photo everywhere. What you don't know about this is that you actually have to buy your spot to be over there. So we got there super early, we wanted to get the photo, walked into the rice paddies, and this guy comes, this local comes and tries to hit me with a stick, and he's like shouting at me. So we ran away, and then we realized we actually had to pay. So we paid him. He stopped everyone from coming in my area, and there were loads of people behind me, and we got the perfect shot. But that is why Bali is a lie.
This brings me to my next point. Forbidden, Grab, Gojek, Uber, you name it. In many tourist places, you'll see signs banning rideshare apps. The Bali Provincial Transport Department has officially banned Uber back in January 2016 in order to protect taxi drivers. Yet every time we tried to get an official taxi, we were met with drivers who either refused to put on the meter or charged us about 3 times the actual price of the ride. Gojek and Grab, which are very similar to Uber, were never officially banned by the government. yet you will still be forbidden to use these services in many areas. Once you're spotted looking for a transportation, you will however be met with a horde of unofficial taxi pretending to be, which feels rather counterproductive, pressuring, and unsafe.
These days, and especially traveling as a solo female traveler, I prefer to do things that are a little more official via apps. Some of the backlash has been to completely rule out these apps in certain areas like Parang Bay or even parts of Ubud. And I was literally followed around and harassed for trying to order a Grab or a Gojek.
Poor tourist, life is so hard. Remember I said for me, foreigners are 50% of what's wrong with Bali? I want to jump to the topic of cultural appropriation. Most of the island's 3 million annual visitors seem to come to do just two things: party and get blessed. Now, don't get me wrong, I have no problem with people taking their best Insta shot, pulling their shiniest holiday outfits, and feeling good about themselves and their body. You do you, boo, and I'm here for it. But first, can we do our research and be more respectful of other people's culture?
A woman faces 6 years in jail and a substantial fine after posing naked next to a sacred tree in Bali.
Displaying ostentatious signs that do not belong to my religion is, in my opinion, disrespectful. I wouldn't go into a mosque, roll out the praying rug, and get on my knees if I know nothing and don't adhere to the dogmas of faith of said religion. So why do people believe it's okay to go into sacred temples and engage in religious rites? I think it would bother me much less if there wasn't a camera looking for the perfect angle and repeated attempts at the best shot every time I saw this occurring. These temples are often open to the public though. Anyone can enter, subject to the tourist tax obviously, and partake in this vision if one wishes to learn its meaning. Something that means nothing to you can mean something significant to someone else. I try to think about such matters with a balanced view. I know that in India, for example, a foreigner dressed in a traditional outfit is appreciated by the locals. Common sense will be your best friend here, and when unsure, you can always ask. Now, I don't pretend to be better than everyone else and to never find myself on the uneducated side of things. And in this spirit, here's a picture of me and my boyfriend, coerced by a driver in an awkward Anjali mudra we didn't have the heart to say no to. I promised myself I'd delete the picture the second it had back my phone, but I thought this would nicely highlight my point. He later offered for us to pray in a temple behind us, to which I responded explaining it felt wrong as it wasn't my culture. But yet again, Bali had found a way to monetize something. Forcing tourists to buy or rent sarongs when you see locals entering on another side of the temple where ticket booths there isn't, in their plain clothes and showing skin, seems to go against religious belief for me. The vast majority of locals appear to be very religious. Bali is actually nicknamed Island of the Gods. Yet, you can't do whatever the heck you want with religion. You either stick by dogmas or you don't. I don't believe Buddhism dictates that foreigners must pay a different price, must wear different clothes. I read a post where a foreigner wrote, "At the water temple, we had to pass through a route that had been intentionally designed for tourists. It led us on a confusing loop, with souvenir shops and Indonesian women who would stop us halfway through, touting a selection of batik clothes, printed tees, and anything else one could lay their eyes on. The persistent touting made going to the temple almost seem like a distant memory. I remembered going to the Buddha bar in Dubai and feeling uneasy to see Buddha, a figure of zen and serenity, placed in the center of alcohol drinking and meat-eating crowds. Throughout my time here, I wonder if the people in Bali thought any differently about tourists. Perhaps religious and cultural appropriation has never been an issue for the Balinese. I also can write off the Balinese culture as diluted so quickly, forgetting that the furthest we traveled were areas largely dominated by tourists. Trust me, we had planned to do much more in Indonesia, but by the time all of the above unfolded, we were pretty drained and just wanted to leave. Sometimes you just have to leave a situation and come back to it later if you want to revisit with a different mindset and perspective. When talking to locals, one thing kept coming back though. "You were very smart not to be driving scooters. I see accidents every day," taxi driver said. We met with an expat from Switzerland who built a dog rescue here, and he confided that he totally got where we were coming from with our remarks and felt the same way when he had first arrived. Every other foreigners we talked to seemed genuinely shocked when we said we couldn't bear this place, as if we had insulted an institution no one is ever allowed to talk bad about. I feel like there's a Bali cult on social media, and you're either a cool, woke surfer yogi, or you just want everyone on your platforms to feel like their lives suck because they can't have what you do. Trust me, most of it is scened and perfectly cropped so you don't see the million other tourists lining up for the perfect "I am alone on my paradise island" shot, or it's just plain photoshopped.
We managed to see 2 manta rays, but they were so quick at swimming and all the tourists were kind of scaring them away because there was a lot of people going at the same time. So we're jumping in and out of the water a lot, which was a bit hectic, but still really fun.
In a way, Bali reminds me of when people watch Emily in Paris and think this is the real Paris. I came here with the intention to scout for real estate and potentially buy property on the island. It is becoming increasingly popular to have your own villa for a fraction of the price it would cost back home. Naively, I thought this was a great investment opportunity and started researching online. It is very much possible to go through the whole process without ever having to set foot on the island, but I used my gut feeling on this one and decided to postpone until I was able to check out my options and talk directly to the people involved on the ground. Oh boy, I'm glad I did. I won't go too much into details on this one. If that's what you want to do, proceed at your own risk and do your diligent research. But it is important to know that you will never own the land you buy in Indonesia as a foreigner. It's a scheme put in place by the government to preserve the land and eventually get it back after your lease is up. So even if you were to buy a land and build a villa from scratch, you will eventually have to give it back as you buy the plot of land only for a certain number of years. So you're basically only leasing it, but for some reason I don't comprehend, it is legal to market it as a sale. Anyways, there are some workarounds like entitling the land you buy to an Indonesian citizen, but you can imagine how the tables can turn very quickly with that one. I was aware of this, and it didn't necessarily bother me not to own the land forever. What did bother me a lot, though, is seeing how these villas are actually made. I didn't manage to get footage of this, and I interestingly couldn't find much about this online, but we drove past many construction sites where you see how the workers live. You see these huge 10-bedroom villas, and on the other side, tiny bamboo shacks where workers are piling. Worse, we saw older women, I'm talking 60 years old plus, bare feet, carrying cement bricks on the top of their heads without any safety equipment. I didn't need to see any more. The very same people who were thrilled to have their villa cost only a fifth of what they would pay back home are the same ones who would be outraged if such practices were carried out in their own country. While we can still debate on the fact that work is work and most of the workers don't have better options to create a living for their families, I think we can agree that it is morally wrong when the only reason your villa is that cheap to build is because the labor is underpaid and puts people at risk. Imagine your own grandmother doing the work and decide if you think it's worth it, is my question to you ultimately. So, has tourism ruined Bali? Ruined implies that there was something pure, that an authentic Bali once existed, and that it is now threatened. But the real Bali that many people refer to, imagined as a paradise with a rich culture, was not created by the Balinese. Rather, it was a Dutch colonial construction originally developed to justify the bloody takeover of the island. In response to their international embarrassment over the mass suicide that preceded its colonial rule, named a puputan, the Dutch decided that Bali had a rich spiritual culture in need of preservation. Maintaining Balinese culture then would be a merit of Dutch colonial policy, although at times this incorporated the Dutch colonists' interpretations of Balinese culture and clashed with what the Balinese people actually wanted. Many cultural aspects of Bali that we now take for granted as signature institution, like terraced rice fields and the caste system, are in part a product of this Dutch policy. The Western artists who flocked to the island following the Dutch rule promoted the Netherlands' Balinese narrative. Brushstroke by brushstroke, these artists not only constructed Bali as a living museum, but also added their own paradisiacal impressions of Bali, based on Orientalist themes that were foreign to the Balinese, to create the image widely accepted today. Another reason commonly given to support the argument for a ruined Bali is the environmental impact of mass development on the island, characterized by water shortage, environmental degradation, sanitation issues, loss of agricultural land, deforestation, overcrowded destinations, loss of authenticity, and higher cost of living for locals.
As I scoot around Bali, it's not just the temples that I find ubiquitous. There is something else that you see everywhere: plastic. Bali has now become the epicenter of the global plastic waste issue. Following a few more leads, I find the big kahuna.
This is it, where the majority of the garbage goes, right into the ground. It's something to be here, to smell it, to see the people working in it, trying to dig some value out. It's a weird expression, throw out. I'm gonna throw this out as if it's going into some outer space, into some void. There is no out. We need a new expression. There's no more void. It's going right back into our world and our lives.
My boyfriend also pointed out to me the lack of evacuation routes in case of a natural disaster, which is a very likely scenario and threat, or which no one has control over. Geologists and tsunami scientists consider Bali a high-risk tsunami area. According to estimates, wave could strike the beach 20 to 80 minutes after an earthquake in the nearby Indo-Australian and the Eurasian plate collision zone. Located in a low-lying and densely populated zone, Kuta receives approximately 70,000 tourists every month. In this busy tourist area, only a few roads lead away from the beach and are often jam-packed with traffic. If a disaster were to happen, the collaterals would be catastrophic. On average, every 2 years, a destructive tsunami occurs in Indonesia. In December of 2004, the Aceh province was hit by the Indian Ocean tsunami, where more than 160,000 people were killed. In November 2022, an earthquake on the island of Java killed another 635 and injured 7,729 people. There's some good news though. Bali has recently passed a ban on tourists renting scooters. While I'm sure local mafias will still find a way around it, it will hopefully at least reduce the amount of accidents. To leave on a positive note, no place is all bad. Bali has beautiful sunsets, many options for veggie food, and if you look hard enough, you'll find activities that will resonate with your value system. I want to shout out these guys who do an incredible work for all the dogs on the island. I've put the link to the Airbnb experience in the description box if you want to spend your money wisely. All opinions are my own, and I do not wish to offend anyone by sharing, simply to bring forth information that I don't see widely on the internet. If you love Bali and have nothing but good things to say, please tell me what you like about it, and we can help each other see through a different lens.
For the last 8 months, we've been very busy cleaning up our waterways here in Bali.
Finally, don't just travel to eat, pray, love. Your dollar is power. Tourists play an important role in shaping the development of such regions. In order to retain the integrity of the world's cultures, it is crucial we seek out authenticity. Cultural appropriation is a powerful tool and has the potential to drive economic growth and facilitate cross-cultural exchange when used meaningfully.